Shabbat Shalom, everyone. How are you? Today we're in the third aliyah of Yitro. I'm going to back up a little bit into the second aliyah so you can get the big picture and remember what's going on. In Exodus chapter 18, beginning in verse 13, the next day Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Moses answered him, "Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and laws." Moses' father-in-law replied, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone." And then today's aliyah says in verse 24, Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided themselves. Now, Moses' father-in-law, his name was Yitro. In your English Bible, it may say Jethro. And Jethro, knew a few things about how to delegate, how to divide up responsibility. There's someone else, an Italian, named Vilfredo Pareto, that's a fun name to say, who made some observations and came up with something that some people know as the 80-20 rule. Others know it as the Pareto principle. And basically, he noticed in Italy that 20% of the people owned 80% of the land. And in a company, 20% of the people usually produce 80% of the most effective consequences of their work. And in our time, usually 20% of our time is the most effective and 80% is not so effective. If you've ever had to work with a group on a group project at school, maybe you have seen the Pareto principle at work too. Sometimes 20% of the group does 80% of the work, or 20% of the group does all the work, and 80% of the group benefit from the 20%'s work. Have you seen that happen before? Yeah, me too. Well, Yitro's solution for this to Moses was, you need to stop doing all the work yourself, Moses, and you need to divide it up among other leaders. Was that good advice? Yes, that was excellent advice. But there's more. Do you know how I know there's more? It's in Yitro's name, in Jethro's name. Yitro comes from the Hebrew root word yetar, okay? And that means the rest of it, the remainder, or the leftovers. It would be like if you had an abundant meal for dinner, lots and lots of food on the table, and you and your family couldn't eat it all. What would you do with the leftovers? Well, you'd box them up and have leftovers for the next day. Well, Yitro was a great manager, but there's more. There are leftovers to what we can learn from him. And what we can learn from him is that it's not just that it's too much work for one person. That's usually what we see and understand when we read this story. But there's more. Yitro. It's that one person wasn't designed to do all the work. Wow, did you ever think about that? The Pareto principle describes something that happens in the world with regular people. But when we look at the body of Messiah and the way God designed things, we see that there's more. God has something else in mind that has to do with us working together, working well together. And it starts way back in creation with God himself. Do you remember in Genesis 1, verse 26? What does God say? Let us make man in our image. Right from the beginning, God is not working solo. He is working together as Father, Son, and Spirit. And in Genesis 2:18, he says, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. And of course, we know that then he made Eve, Hava, and Adam and Eve worked together. So what we see from what Adonai is telling us through his scriptures is that he does not ascribe to the 20-80 rule or the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle. He envisions a body of Messiah that is 100% engaged. 100% engaged. In fact, he tells us that in Ephesians 4, verses 11 through 13. And he gave some as apostles, and some as prophets, and some as evangelists, and some as pastors and teachers, for the equipping of the saints for the work of service, to the building up of the body of Messiah, until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a mature man, to the measure of the stature which belongs to the fullness of Messiah. That is the remainder, the Yeter, what's left that we can learn from Yitro's name. Shabbat Shalom.